Lance, we're halfway through week 4 out of 8, if my math is right.
They're halfway through the process, and I haven't seen the progress, but I'm sure many of them have.
I gotta be
probably
impressed. The progress is amazing. Sherry, Ken, Kevin, Lisa, Liz, Melanie's. You're there, Melanie. Stacy, David, JJ. I mean, everyone's. And Ashley, everyone's moving along on this. I'm very impressed. Good for you all for keeping up. Look, Lance and I respect your time. We understand that you're professionals, and we've tried to devise this. This is not a make work type program where you check off the box. This is for your personal growth, make you a better servicer of a bank asset, and eventually put more money in your pocket. Right, Lance?
Absolutely, Bob, and I just wanted to share with them, just got in the studio yesterday and cut some updates for week number 8. So there's going to be some brand new material included in this training that's not been available in previous servicing certification training. So there's some new content, and I'm excited about it.
Lance, normally we fly you to California, but guess what? Arkansas has studios. Who knew?
Guys, I'm depressed because Bob normally would have flown me out to LA for updates, and he found a studio 3 blocks from the bank. So no overnight stays, no sunny California.
Just a little bit cheaper than California, just a tad. Anyway, hey, good news. I don't know if it's good news. SBA is on a tear lately, Lance, and issuing all these notices. This one came out this morning on the 159. It is in your handout section. Go ahead and click on that, download that. We'll have it up on our website soon as well. What's SBA want us to do on the 159? I know this is servicing, but this is hot.
Well,
this news right off the press. Go ahead.
Yeah, the 159 is related to servicing, Bob. Servicing officers, the 159 has to be submitted to Coleman after the loan closes. What this is going to allow you to do is submit the 159 via SBA 1. And the one thing I can tell all our participants about SBA 1, as every day passes, I was talking with Bob earlier, SBA 1 will do more and more. An example of it, your SBA Express loans. If you're still using E-Tran to put them in, then you have to generate your own authorization. If you're using SBA 1, guess what? You have a nice, tidy SBA Express authorization prepared for you that all you have to do is download it and print it out and get the signature on it. The other thing that's cool, Bob, that they've added, previously we've told participants you can't do a credit memo on SBA 1, but on Express and PLP loans now, it will also generate an incredibly thorough credit memo that touches base with all of the SBA eligibility issues. So I hate to say it's a moving target, but it is. They keep tweaking it and improving it, and this 159 notice is an example of that. You know, if you are processing your loans through SBA 1, you're putting the 159 in as part of the document package, and then you're having to turn around and submit it to Coleman after the loan closes. Well, now you only have to put it in one time, and I think that's the objective of SBA 1.
And go ahead and review the notice just so you understand what the difference is between, or what SBA defines as an agent. Be clear about what has to be disclosed. The problem that you have as servicers / PDK, package preparers, is if the N159 is not prepared properly, you're going to have to wrestle with that.
Well, and if you're collecting a packaging fee as a bank, you need to be doing a 159 on it.
Yeah, and disclose. I mean, just make sure everything's disclosed. And if it's not there, clean up the files. Let's go to the poll questions. Have you ever had an owner standby note involved in the equity contribution to SBA loan? I assume that this is common.
Well, very common, Bob. You've got somebody selling a business to someone, there's some blue sky involved, and quite often a owner carry is part of the deal. And just was curious how many people in our group had experienced an owner standby as part of the equity contribution.
Why are you asking this question in a servicing course?
Well, I think it comes into play for servicers, Bob, because what is the most common question asked after about a year? Can we start collecting payments on the loan? And so there's some servicing issues that you need to deal with, and we did cover that this week in the course. But I would say 9 times out of 10, Bob, if there's an owner note on standby, one of the servicing issues that comes up is either the borrower or the owner, previous owner that has the note on standby requests the ability to make payments on that note.
How soon do you get requests on an owner's standby note to allow payments to start?
Kind of a connected question. My most common experience, Bob, is at the end of the first year. I think prudent lenders would probably give more consideration to a request at the end of the second year if the borrower is hitting proper debt coverage ratios. That's certainly a time where you could give some consideration to it.
Lance, what do you do? Let's talk real world. What do you do? You're servicing, you get the financial statements in year 2, and you're ready to sign it off, and all of a sudden you realize, I see some interest payments there that are going to the previous owner. In other words, they're making payments even with the standby.
Well, and you bring up a great point, Bob, because as much as we'd like to believe the borrowers follow every rule that we share with them and follow the rules of the standby, there's a great frequency in that they start making some payments without the acknowledgement or approval from the participant bank. You want to make sure you document the file.
Yes.
And you want to evaluate whether or not it's appropriate, but you want to document. If you have a standby in place, you've not released the standby, they've been making payments, you want to make sure that you document your loan file to that effect.
Would you go so far as to say, and hey, we're going to allow it?
I don't think so at that point until you do the analysis and make sure that the debt coverage is there.
But I agree, document the file. You're not going to, and I would document it that, hey, this is an SBA loan. We've counseled everybody. We've told them not to do it anymore. But we're not going to call the loan. I would say we're not going to call it. We understand there's a violation. We're not going to call it. Yeah.
If the loan's current, you're not going to call it.
How often do you lower the interest rate on an SBA loan? I guess the better question is, how often have you lowered the interest rate on an SBA loan?
Yeah, I asked that question, Bob, because it was a servicing issue that I was dealing with this week. You know, we had a borrower that was not in trouble, but their rate was Wall Street Journal Prime plus 2 3/4. We were looking at their cash flow. It was more than one time, but it was a little skinny. So we lowered the rate, pushed the amortization out a little bit, and put them in a position where they could make the payment. And again, the SOP 5057-2 talks about, in several places, finding ways to make sure the small business borrower can repay the loan. And you're better off lowering the rate and extending payments on somebody that's struggling a little bit than you are digging in, taking a firm stand, and having them default.
And the takeaway is this is something in your toolbox. I would almost look at this before a pure deferment, but it's something that you can consider.
Bob, one thing, you know, in one of the assignments, I asked the question, what's the special problem? The special problem was the deferment, the 4-month deferment that was being requested would extend the early default period. And because if you do a deferment in the first 18 months after the final disbursement on a regular SBA loan, instead of being 18 months, it goes to 22 months. And on a revolving line of credit, 18 months after the first disbursement, again, it's going to extend it for whatever period that deferment's on. So that was the special servicing consideration on that particular assignment.
How often have you released a junior lien on real estate? What is RRE? Should that be CRE or
it's residential real estate?
Residential. Okay, that's what I figured. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know how SBA always takes a junior mortgage, especially when there's not enough collateral, and quite often there's no real recoverable value in that second or third mortgage that you take. Quite often in servicing, and so you can see quite a few people have dealt with that. quite often in servicing, you'll get a request for release, and it could be one of two things. You could be going through liquidation and look and see that there's no value and release it just to relieve the headache of dealing with it on liquidation. But also, Bob, you could have a solid borrower that's current, that has a house that you haven't owned. They want to sell their current house and buy a new one, and you may release it and refile it when they acquire that new house.
Or they want to put an add-on, they want to put on a pool, you know.
And the key thing here, Bob, is as long as it makes prudent lending sense, that's a unilateral decision.
And I haven't seen the Inspector General. I haven't seen Inspector General denial of guarantees on that. Now there may be repair issues.
They could if you released a junior lien that had recoverable value, there could be a repair. But I mean, if you do your calculation and determine
80% minus
example,
this.
Bob, let's say they have a $250,000 house with a $225,000 first mortgage, and you've got a second. There's no recoverable value.
Yeah. And what's the SOP say? 80% of that? Yeah, 80%. So you're good. Last question. Do you feel comfortable making this decision?
Well, and as a banker, I just want to encourage everybody, releasing collateral, as an example, Bob, I forget, someone asked a question about an old vehicle where the engine didn't run or the engine was torn up. There are appropriate and prudent times to release collateral. It is a unilateral decision. The thing you have to do is just make sure you document your file appropriately.
For those of you who answer no, you have a couple of resources. Number one, reach out to Lance. I know even 6 months from now, he'll be happy to walk you through. Also, reach out to SBA.
Absolutely.
Use your local district council. Use your local, that's just because you have, and I like the people who said no, just because you have authority to do it, maybe doesn't mean you should do it unless you're comfortable with it. So don't feel bad about that. Anyway, go ahead. Talk about week 4.
Well, we talked about no modifications. We did talk about collateral modifications and releases, the importance of insurance coverage. One of the most important things, Bob, is your SBA loan authorization is going to indicate what types of insurance coverage are required as a servicer. You want to pick up that authorization and make sure that proof of those insurances are in fact in the servicing file. What to do if you have a modification of management covenants or management structure. You'd like to think this never happens, Bob. I had an LLC that was a borrower, and they decided to form a C corporation, didn't tell me. And I had to scramble and take some servicing action and fix the loan. It was not a significant issue, but all of us who lend money and service loans know that sometimes borrowers do things without telling you. And we also talked about loan assumptions. And in the case of loan assumptions, Bob, that is, I mean, it does come up on performing loans periodically, but loan assumptions sometimes can be your very best liquidation tool.
Another tool in your toolbox. Very quickly on the homework assignment, Lance.
Well, we're still back to my furniture store, Bob, and unfortunately, I'm still having some tough time. Oh, wait, that was the previous. Okay, this was a 4-month deferment. It is in fact unilateral. It's one that you just need to write up a memorandum and document why it makes prudent lending sense. And the special circumstance, number 2 part is what I said earlier. When you do the 4-month deferral, you're going to extend the early default period for 4 months.
Good. Email question. Go ahead, Lance.
A bank carries blanket insurance to cover loans.
Okay, go ahead.
And the requirements of the policy have the customers attest to maintaining insurance and obtaining proof of insurance prior to closure. Once those are complete, receive notification of cancellation, customer moves forward, and we don't get a notice the bank is still protected. Is this compliant? The thing that makes sure on insurance is that the customer has coverage. And if you get notice of cancellation, then either a blanket policy like this that covers it, I think would be compliant, or a forced place individual policy. It's not what type of policy you have. It's just that you have coverage, because Later, when we talk about liquidation in this course, it comes down to care and preservation of collateral. And what you want to make sure you avoid is going into liquidation, you've got commercial real estate as collateral, it catches fire, and there's no insurance. You're going to get a repair on that. So in this particular case, when you look at the insurance coverage, blanket coverage, it'll cover the property, you're fine. Or if you get a notice of cancellation and you don't have a blanket coverage policy that will cover it, force place insurance on that particular property.
Great. What's going to happen in week 5?
Well, ironically, we're going to talk some more about deferments, the differences between a deferment, and there are differences. When you talk about loans that you keep in your portfolio or loans that you sell on the secondary market, there's certainly some differences in how you deal with deferments. In fact, the only truly unilateral action on a 7A loan that's sold in the secondary market is a 90-day deferment. So we'll talk about deferments, how to implement them, how to analyze them, and the differences between a portfolio loan and one sold in the secondary market. We're going to talk about dealing with senior liens. You know, we talked about releasing collateral on a pesky junior residential real estate mortgage. We're going to talk about dealing with those senior liens and discuss what we do when a loan gets past due and we need to put it in liquidation. And quite frankly, when I look at servicing, the part of servicing where you can avoid the most potential repairs is once a loan goes into liquidation.
Good. And we have, by the way, the homework assignments, it's not a hard stop deadline. This is a recommended deadline. We want you to do that. Lance, you can't make your payments, but now what are you doing with your, you're selling your house. I thought maybe you're going to be putting in a pool.
You know, I've started to do better, Bob. I'm out of the deferment period. And I've been making on-time payments, and I've got a house that you have a second mortgage. As you can see, Bob, I leveraged that baby up. I owe $391.63 on a $400,000 house, but I'm selling it. I'm going to buy a smaller house. I want to downsize. So the question is, would you release? And if you would release, document the file with the memo.
Very good. And I believe that's it. Are we? I'm on my script, and I don't have anything after that. So very good. Do we have any questions? Well, very good. Halfway through, congratulations. Keep the questions coming for Lance. Lance, everyone enjoy your weekend. Lance, I'll talk to you next Friday.
Have a great weekend.